Good evening and welcome to our last class for content. We only have a couple loose ends that we've got to wrap up on, and we'll spend the end of tonight's class kind of going through the manual real quick, give you an idea about what the final is going to be like on Thursday. So you have completed a driver's ed program with all its content. We use the textbook, we use the manual, we use the New Hampshire curriculum. So hopefully you come away with all this material to make you a better, safer driver in the years to come. So we're going to find out on Thursday what your... Whoa! Looks like my camera is frozen, so I apologize. We're going old school. We're going to do the computer camera. So hold on a second. I'm going to turn off. I was not able to recharge my battery for my camera. I probably should have my battery recharged, but I've got two batteries, both dead. So we're kind of stuck with what we've got here on the computer, so we'll live with that. Plus, I'm not going to be on the screen that much anyway. So let's take a look, see how many people. We got 11 people in. We're going to wait just a few moments to get the rest of the class here. I know some people could not make it. It is an important class. Well, all of them are important, but we're going to wrap things up. Let's kind of deal with the driving situation. I know some people are going to be going away before school starts, so please make sure that you contact me and let me know what your availability is so I can try to work around when you're going to be gone. I'll try to do my best to get you done in the next couple weeks. I do have another class starting August 10th. It's a very small class, should not be a problem. Excuse me, a problem with drive times, because there are only 7 or 8 people. So if you know anybody that wants to get driver's ed out of the way before school's before school starts, just send them my way to Eventbrite and we can go from there. As I said last night, I am going to have to start collecting the books, so I'll probably do that on Friday and Saturday if you're scheduled to drive. If not, Monday and Tuesday of next week. Some of you still haven't paid, so please check with your parents. You would have given me a check when you picked up the textbook. I think we've got 3 or 4 people that still haven't, so please get that into me as soon as possible. So let's get right into what we're going to talk about tonight. First of all, let's finish up the topic of night driving and fatigue. So let's go through and get out something to write with. So, pad of paper, pencil. Your notes are so important. It really is when it comes to studying. I think if you were to go over your notes, especially when I told you this is important, and study that, then you're going to be okay. So this I want you to write down. The fatal crash rate is 3 times greater than daytime driving. More people are dying at night than they are during the day. The reason being is we've got 3 categories of people that are having a difficult time maneuvering a vehicle at night. And that is old people because of poor vision and reactions. We've got young people who like to drive fast and who are distracted. And the last group of people are people that are under the influence of alcohol or drugs. You're going to see more activity with alcohol and drugs at night than you are during the day. Not that you can't come across someone that's swerving down the road that's high on something or had too much to drink, but Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night are the 3 days that come to mind where you're going to have a higher percentage of people on the road. So night vision has specific problems. So we're going to be talking about fatigue, glare. Another term I want you to write down is overdriving your headlights. That means when you can't stop within the distance that your lights are illuminating. I do want you to know that your high beams shine about 350 feet, your low beams shine about 100. This is why we have so many animals being killed at night with roadkill, is by the time something is illuminated, you're not going to be able to stop. And you do need to know this. I will guarantee some of you will get this wrong on the final. You need to know when to put your headlights on. Headlights must be on a half hour after sunset to a half hour before sunrise, or any time when your vision is limited. So that would be snow, fog, hail, so any bad weather. Driving at night. I just downloaded this, so let's see if I can find this. Here we go.
From sunrise to sunset, drivers have a huge advantage in the sun. Although it's easy to take for granted, the sun makes it immensely easier for us to see.
Once darkness falls, driving becomes a whole new ballgame. There's no doubt about it. Driving is a lot dicier after the sun goes down.
Driving at night does present a whole new set of circumstances for any driver, a young driver or an older driver.
Darkness itself is a hazard. Even people with the best of vision cannot see as well at night. To begin with, your field of vision is less. You actually see a smaller amount of space. Objects are not as sharp, you can't perceive dips and rises as well, and you have a harder time distinguishing colors.
A person with excellent vision still needs to remember to slow down and be aware of all the hazards that could present itself at night.
You can only see as far ahead as your headlights shine. That makes it harder to see pedestrians, cyclists, animals, obstacles in the road. So go slowly enough so that you can stop within the distance lighted by your headlights. If it's safe, use your high beams, especially on open highways. But always know when to change to low beams. If you approach another car from behind, or if you meet an oncoming car, then switch to low beams. High beams blind other drivers and increase the likelihood of a crash. To avoid being blinded, don't look directly at oncoming headlights. Instead, look to the right edge of your lane and watch the oncoming car out of the corner of your eye.
A couple of other brief points. Never drive with just your parking lights on. Parking lights are designed for parking. They're not a substitute for headlights. And keep your windshield and your headlights clean. They can get real dirty real quick. It's easy enough to do. I give them a quick wipe when I'm at the gas station. It helps reduce glare, it helps the lights to shine brighter, and in general, it helps you to see much better at night.
This is Jim Angelo.
So driving at night, this is why the state requires you to do the 10 hours. Now, I've talked to some of you about your 40 hours. This is getting to be difficult to accomplish because it stays light. Like right now, it's a little after 8 o'clock, and really this is not nighttime driving. Now, your lights should probably just about be going on right about now. Okay, remember, when the sun sets, a half hour after sun sets, it's still light out right now. We can't see the sun. If you look out the window, this is just about the time that you're putting it on. So maybe at 7:45, 7:50, the sun wasn't in the horizon. Now we've got a half hour to have them on. So in the next probably 10 minutes, it will probably be almost totally dark. So that would be the time that you put it on. What do you do when you are driving at night and you've got that person that's got the big pickup and the real bright headlights coming up behind you? What you need to do is adjust your day-night activator on your rearview mirror. Most cars have a switch, a little lever that you can either tip up to flip the mirror to give it a different angle, or you even have it, like in the driver's ed car, maybe I'll start pointing this out. We actually have a little lever that you just kind of slide, and it darkens it automatically. We don't have to change the position of the mirror. If you've got a car coming towards you with very bright headlights on, you want to shift your eyes, focusing on the right side of the road over towards the white edge line. We call that the fog line. Now, the next problem about driving at night is usually people get tired after working a full day's worth of work, activities, your body has something called circadian rhythm, which means that you're almost like training your body to go to sleep at certain times. So when you're in a routine, like the school year would be a routine, Monday through Friday, you're probably staying up till homework is done, and you're probably going to bed. So you're getting your homework done 10:30, 11, 11:30. It can be later, but you're training your body to go to sleep at that time. So what I want you to write down is that the time that you normally go to sleep, let's say it's 10:30. Let's add a half hour to that. So now you're out on the road at 11 o'clock, okay? So you normally go to bed at 10:30. It's Friday night. You went to the movies. You get out of the movies. It's a little after 11, so it's a half hour after you normally go to bed, and you still have a half hour to drive home. You're going to get something called the nods, where you start to go to sleep, these micro sleeps, where you shut your eyes for a moment and then you open them up. We call that like a micro sleep. Pretty dangerous. And the thing that I want to remind you is that each time that you close your eyes, the next time that you do it, it will probably be longer. You really have to try to fight that feeling of fatigue. I think most of you have probably experienced this. Usually it's when you're watching TV and you've had a rough day and you're just really tired. You're watching a show, you want to stay awake, but before you know it, you start to nod off. You close your eyes, you open it up, and you wonder, how much of the show did I just miss? Well, the same thing with driving. You close your eyes for a moment, you may go 50 feet, 100 feet, in 1 second, 3 seconds, depending on what your speed is. That is extremely dangerous. And it happens to everybody. So what I want you to write down is that most people are going to feel it like from, they say 12 to 6 in the morning, but it really actually happens a little bit earlier than that, especially for people that normally go to bed a little bit before that. But most people can stay awake till around midnight. And then mid-afternoon is more of a problem for older people. Okay, older people are going to have micro sleeps in the afternoon. If you ever visited your grandparents, you know how your grandfather's on the rocking chair after a big meal, like at Thanksgiving. He's sleeping at 2:30. Okay, he's getting that sleep in. Okay, not too safe. Now, the other problem that we're having is that people know that they are buying vehicles that have lane departure warning systems. And I showed you a couple devices that are coming on board onto manufacturers to help prevent people drifting. So when you get out of your lane, a noise is coming on. And how about Tesla? Tesla now is where you can actually have your car semi-automatic, meaning that you need to have your hands near the wheel, but the car will drive for you. This was taken, I think, earlier this year. Let me show you this clip.
LA, and appears to show, as you can see right here, a driver asleep at the wheel. This is crazy. Asleep at the wheel of his Tesla. It's raising more safety concerns about the vehicle. And ABC's Trevor Alt joins us with more. Trevor, good morning to you.
Well, Dan, good morning. This is both scary and it's bizarre, right? This was recorded by a California couple on one of the busiest highways in the country, and in the lane next to them, that driver seeming peacefully asleep at the wheel.
A shocking sight just one lane over in Southern California.
He's totally asleep. This is crazy.
Clint Olivier and his wife catching that man taking an apparent cat nap, arms crossed as his vehicle drives down I-5 at 70 miles an hour.
It was scary to think that, okay, so the guy 18 inches on my passenger side is sound asleep.
After more than half a minute, the driver seems to wake up, grabbing the wheel in a jolt. ABC News has not spoken to that driver, and Tesla declining to comment on the video. The company has said drivers are supposed to keep their hands on the wheel at all times, but incidents like this continue to occur. While we aren't sure what the driver was doing in this latest incident, it's raised renewed questions about the safety of automation in vehicles. Of course, more research is needed, but even Clint, despite his shock, sees the direction American transportation could be headed.
It was a scary experience, but also, hey, this is 2019 and that's the future.
Clint does make an interesting point. If the autopilot was on here, the technology worked. That car maintained its speed, it never swerved or drifted, but it is still a dangerous incident, and also it is illegal to fall asleep at the wheel, even if your car can drive itself.
But at some point, it may be safe to fall asleep at the wheel.
It could be a monumental health accomplishment when the car works, but we're just not quite there.
So that's a little bit scary when you think about it. Okay, the car is built so it can do that. I wouldn't rely on that, but we are finding people are actually that don't have that in their vehicle just kind of nodding off. I will tell you that you think you can fight it. You think that you can keep your eyes open. Maybe you've seen somebody that maybe they're in class and their eyes are open, but you're wondering how much are they retaining? How much are they really thinking? Driving is where you're picking up information, signs, road markings, the condition of the road so you can change position. You don't have the quick reflexes that you normally do when you start to get tired. So even though you're awake and your eyes are open, there is going to be a delay in your driving. Let me show you another a study that they did with college kids. And they kept them up all night and then see how well that they were able to perform some driving skills when they were awake the next morning. So let's watch this.
Back at 7:44 this morning on Today investigates a serious hazard facing young drivers that is often overlooked. NBC's senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers is in Bethesda, Maryland with details. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Meredith. We're talking about driving while tired. We've all done it. But experts say it's particularly dangerous for teens. Fatigue is a factor in at least 100,000 crashes every year, and most of those involve young drivers who get behind the wheel when they're drowsy and never make it home.
I sit and I replay that night over and over and over again, and I thought, I'm just so close to home. I can make it.
That night, Rusty Burris was 18 years old with a bright future. But driving home from his girlfriend's house, his life changed forever.
I knew I was tired, but I didn't really feel that I was that tired. And driving home, I got just a mile from home and fell asleep at the wheel.
In seconds, Rusty's car drifted off this country road and rolled over. The impact crushed his roof and his spine. Rusty would never walk again.
I've fallen asleep and crashed my car one time. And that's all it took.
Experts say every day, millions of teens are dangerously tired when they get behind the wheel. More than a third of teens say they drive drowsy on a regular basis, and more than half of all fatigue-related crashes involve drivers under 25.
It's a huge problem, and it's probably bigger now than it was in the past.
Tom Balkin is president of the National Sleep Foundation. He says adolescents go through changes in their circadian rhythms that make it nearly impossible for them to fall asleep before 11 p.m. Combine that with early morning classes, after-school jobs, and late-night socializing, and it's easy to see why teens are chronically sleep-deprived.
The average college student needs about 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep. Virtually none of them get that. In fact, they average 6 hours of sleep per night.
So how can fatigue affect their driving?
Today's show, how may I help you?
To find out, we set up an unscientific experiment with 3 Today Show interns, Patrick, Meredith, and Brian, all college students who habitually drive after not much sleep.
Last summer, I was driving tired almost every day.
When it's final season, there's no sleep. That's when the drowsy driving starts to kick in.
For our experiment, we kept our kids up for an entire night, no naps or caffeine. Experts told us that would simulate the level of fatigue students typically suffer after a week of insufficient sleep.
You don't want to hit a cone.
Then we brought them here to the Skip Barber Driving School in Connecticut, where with safety instructors by their side, we put them through 2 road tests, a tight, twisty loop, and an emergency lane change.
We're testing today their ability to instantaneously react to an unexpected situation.
Hitting any cones would be the equivalent of a crash in the real world. The day before, all 3 had driven these courses wide awake and aced them.
I haven't hit any cones, and I
think it's not that hard.
I feel pretty confident. Once you got the hang of it, it wasn't that bad.
But watch the difference when they're drowsy. Our kids swerve wildly through turns, hitting cone after cone after cone.
If that had been a real-world situation, he would have had a pretty violent crash.
Inside the car, you'd never know it. Even as they crash, our drowsy students remain slack-jawed and dazed. Patrick clearly is giddy. He almost seems drunk.
In many ways, driving drowsy is very much like driving drunk.
We showed the video to Tom Balkin, our sleep expert. He says drowsiness, like alcohol, can severely impair a driver's reflexes, judgment, and awareness. Should parents be as worried about kids driving when they're too tired as they are about them texting while driving or driving drunk?
Absolutely.
Especially, he says, on long, boring roads like the one where Rusty crashed. So we also tested our kids on this monotonous 2-mile track, each driving it for half an hour.
At first I thought I did okay. You know, I thought I was in control.
But their dead stares tell a different story. Balkin says these are signs of a dangerous condition called microsleeps, where your eyes stay open, but your brain is falling asleep.
And this is the kind of situation where anything unexpected actually could throw them.
Like these surprise cones. We put them up on our kids' final lap to simulate a stopped car or a person unexpectedly in their path. Before the test, we made sure an alert driver could easily stop in time. But watch our drowsy kids.
Whoa.
They're so disoriented, they barely hit the brakes.
Whoa, okay, that was fun. I just killed somebody, didn't I?
Imagine if that cone had been someone's pet or child.
After I sat there for a minute and realized what I did, that's a tough pill to swallow.
That was an eye-opener because that thing that you never know is going to happen that will just come out of nowhere. That's what you have to be prepared for. And if you're tired, you might not be.
A realization that came too late for Rusty Burris.
When you're tired, stop. Don't push it. Because even though you've only got a mile left, you could be throwing your entire life away trying to drive 1 more mile.
Now, sleep experts say parents should treat drowsy driving just like drunk driving. Tell your kid if he's tired to call you. You'll come pick him up. Or if he gets tired on a long drive, tell him to pull off the road, get some caffeine, and take a 20-minute nap. That should help revive him. Meredith.
All right, Lisa Myers, thank you.
So that's the scary part at the very end is that even though you're driving, and because the driving is a little bit monotonous, your reflexes are reduced. You cannot respond to the yellow lights where you need to stop. Remember, yellow lights sometimes mean you have to go through. Or the pedestrian that pops out and you're not expecting it, or a bicyclist. This is where we're having problems. A lot of our crashes could be contributed to fatigue, but there's no way to prove it without some type of medical exam. And usually when you're so scared after something bad happening, it wakes you up. So even though they're going to come and you're going to have to report to the police what happened, you're going to be wide awake then. So it's really kind of hard to prove that it was fatigue that caused it. But if we could actually see it in real time, like in a video, then probably it'd be a little bit easier to figure it out. So that kind of wraps up nighttime driving and driving and fatigue. Always have a plan of action. When you're driving late at night and you do think you're going to get a little bit tired, stay hydrated, drink coffee that has caffeine. Sugar is okay for a short period of time, but it's going to peak after about a half hour, and then you're going to crash down lower than where you were when you were feeling tired. So anything sugar, chocolate, soda drink, juice, that's all good. But just remember, you are going to start to spike down afterwards. Pulling over to the side of the road, getting some rest, letting someone else drive, talking to people so they can sense when you're not responding, then maybe you're getting a little bit tired. Open the window. Cold air is better than warm. In your notes, don't listen to music that you normally would listen to if you go to sleep. Some people like music on. It makes them tired, so it makes them go to sleep. So if you're going to put on music, don't put on music that makes you tired. Something that's really heavy bass, really loud, heavy rock, rap or something that's going to keep the mind, jarred a little bit and keep you awake. So find a way to fight it for a short period of time, like 15, 20 minutes to a half hour. But if you're on a long drive, like for 6 or 7, and you're really fighting fatigue, really the only best answer is find a gas station, a convenience store, pull over, take a 15, 20-minute nap. You're surprised. You're going to take the edge off, get back into the road, introduce some sugar, some caffeine into your system, and you're probably good to go. Don't think losing 15 minutes to a half hour of a long drive is going to be a big deal, because it really isn't. Be smart, and that's why we have rumble strips, is to help alert people that are, falling asleep. The one thing that I wasn't able to go over, I believe, was manual transmission. So I want you to write down a few things about driving a manual transmission. The first week of class, I introduced Andy Pilgrim, his videos that I used the first week of class that I really liked. And he talked about how automobile manufacturers are building like 97% automatic vehicles and only 3% now manual. It's moreover in Europe, but in the United States, you'd be hard-pressed to go to any car dealership right now in this local area and find a brand new car. Trucks may be a little different, but a brand new car that's a manual transmission. I think it's a good skill to learn how to drive a manual. If it ever comes up where you are afforded that opportunity, I would take it, but I would do it in a parking lot for at least 2 or 3 hours till you feel really confident. And then I would take it out to a back road, and then I would work my way into a neighborhood, city driving, and then on the highway. Because if you have a problem with shifting or clutching, it's going to create panic, and you're going to have a real difficult time. And I found a real good instructional video about driving a manual transmission that I'll show you in just a moment. But let's go through some terminology that I want you to write down. To make the movement of a manual transmission, you need 3 things. You need a clutch pedal, you need a shift, or a car that's equipped with a shift lever, and then an accelerator pedal. Now, of course, you're going to brake to slow down. But these are the 3 things that are going to be used in unison with one another in order to move the vehicle. If you cannot operate the clutch and the gas pedal at the right moment, at the right time, you're going to be made to look like a fool out on the roadway. So let's talk about the clutch. The clutch is the 3rd pedal. So when you look underneath the dash, you've got the gas and the brake. So just to the left of the brake is the clutch pedal. It must be fully pushed down all the way to the floor, which will break the connection between the engine and the transmission. Now you can shift. At that point, you can grab the gear shifter and move it to another gear, from 1st to 2nd, 2nd to 3rd, 3rd to 4th. Now, when you let up on the clutch pedal and push down on the gas pedal, the car will start moving again. It will start accelerating. And like I said, we'll take a look at the video in a minute. Here's a shift pattern. Just know that there are multiple patterns. Could be a 3-speed, 4-speed, 5-speed, 6 speeds. It doesn't matter. Depends on the manufacturer. This I want you to write down to know. The friction point is the point where the engine and the transmission is engaged. When you have the clutch pedal lifted up halfway and the gas pedal being pushed down slightly, you're going to feel the movement of the car wanting to go forward. You're going to hear the roar of the engine start to change. And the easiest way to practice this is in reverse, because reverse gear is geared lower than first gear. You're less likely to stall in reverse. So practice going backwards, backwards, backwards in a parking lot, and then put it in first gear and then move forward, then move forward, then move forward. Now, when you use the emergency brake, that allows you to take your foot off the brake pedal. So when you've engaged the emergency brake, the car will not roll. It will not move. So just remember, when you lift up on the clutch pedal and stop pushing down on the accelerator, the car's going to want to move. You're going to have to drop that release of that emergency brake in order to move the vehicle, or else you're going to stay stuck or barely move with that emergency brake on. You do not have to write this down. I just put this up to simplify it. With every gear, there is a speed that you need to be traveling. If you are not in that gear, the car is not going to be moving efficiently. It's going to feel bogged down. You're not going to get any quick acceleration. So you need to know. And now in some cars, they'll even have lights that will, an arrow that will indicate when you need to shift to the lower or the next higher gear. Basically, what you're going to see in the video in a moment, you're going to see using the tachometer. Once it gets up to around 2,000 to 3,000 revolutions per minute, it's time to go to the next gear. And when you downshift is another term that I want you to know. That helps you regain what we call torque. It allows you to move the vehicle more efficiently. So you should never be going down a hill in fifth gear. You're going to be slowing down the vehicle down rather than your brake going from fifth gear to fourth gear or fourth gear to third gear. And you won't have to use your brake. You only will be shifting. And also when you come to a stop, that's important to be downshifting. From third to second, second to first, stop the vehicle, check for traffic. Traffic is open. You can pull out into traffic. You let up on the clutch. You go from first to second, travel a little bit, then shift from second to third, and you go up so that it's a constant going up like a ladder and coming down on the ladder of the shift pattern. So let's take a look at the video on driving a manual transmission.
So you want to drive a car with a manual transmission? Well, I have bad news and good news. The bad news is there are fewer models on the market now than ever before that have a proper 3-pedal manual transmission. The good news is the ones that do offer the feature are easier to learn on than old cars were. Whether you're going to drive a new car or an old car, I commend you, and I'll get you started. Now, the first part of the lesson is I'm going to explain what's going on when you're operating the manual transmission. Now, it isn't absolutely necessary. It could just be about a stick and a pedal. But what I found is people tend to grasp this a little bit faster, learn faster if they understand what is actually going on under the surface. A car with a gas or diesel engine has a transmission with multiple gears for the same reason a bicycle does. A good bicycle, not one of those retro hipster one-speed bikes, please. The idea behind having these gears is you can pedal only so fast, and you'll reach a certain point, and to go faster, you need to shift up. Same thing is true with a car's engine. Let's take a look at the tachometer. The tachometer is a gauge that shows engine speed, and essentially all cars have them, even automatic. You just don't pay attention to it. It'll be marked typically 1, 2, 3, 4, or in some cases 10, 20, 30, but the idea is multiplied by some number that is the revolutions per minute of the engine. And when you hit the gas a bit, you'll see the needle goes up as the engine speed increases. Typically, though, a gas engine will run only up to about 6,000 to 8,000 RPM. It depends on the car, and there are some exceptions. In this car, it's about 7,400 RPM where you see a red line begin. And that red line is called the red line. And the engine is not supposed to run in the red line because it can be damaged. Now, newer cars are less likely to actually incur damage than older ones, but still, that's not where you want to be. So, if you want to go faster and faster in a car, you need to be able to shift to the next gear. Simple, right? Just like a bicycle. Well, there's one area where it's not like a bicycle. On a bicycle, when you start out, you just pedal 1, 2, 3, 4. You can start from a standing stop. An engine, on the other hand, has an idle speed of typically 750 RPM. So it'll run from 750 RPM to, in this case, 7,400. But below 750, nothing. So what's happening is, when you're sitting still, your engine is going 750 RPM, and your transmission and the gears are not moving at all. And you've got to get them going together at the same speed. And that is going to be your job through the use of the clutch pedal. And you are going to suck at it. It's going to be hilarious. To me, you're going to hate it, but I'm laughing just thinking about it. But here, you probably ought to laugh at it too, because you're going to be bad. But if you stick with it and practice, you're going to get better. So let's start with the pedals. You'll see the extra one here, the third, that is the clutch pedal. But it looks like there are 4 pedals in this car, and that is because this one is, it's technically called the dead pedal, but a better word for that is the footrest. It doesn't really do anything. And footrest is a good name because that is what you're supposed to do, and that is rest your foot there. Do not leave your foot on the clutch pedal. The whole point behind the clutch is use it, and then you get off of it. Put your foot on the dead pedal or the footrest. Here's an important tip before you even get started. When you're operating the clutch pedal, you need your whole leg. You're not putting your heel down, anchoring it like you might with the accelerator pedal and just tilting at the ankle. You need your whole leg. It's a little bit more like a brake pedal in that regard. Also, when you apply the pedal, you always go all the way down to the floor and release all the way out. Always step in all the way, release all the way, and when you're not using the clutch, rest on the dead pedal. Now, before you even head out, if you're just learning how to drive a manual transmission, think ahead and wear sensible shoes. You don't need fancy driving shoes or anything, but here's a tip. Don't wear a big clunky shoe, and don't wear anything with a big heel. And don't judge me. I'm trying to help you, and it's free. Once you learn how to drive, you can wear whatever you want, but for training purposes, be sensible. Now let's get to know the shifter, or the stick, which is how you put the transmission in the different gears. The pattern for the forward gears is pretty much the same in everything, and you'll see it either on top of the knob or somewhere nearby. Typically, the difference between vehicles is really just about how many forward gears it has. This car has 6. Older cars may stop at 4 forward gears. Some cars these days have 7. All just affect how much shifting you'll be doing. Now, one of the most important things you need to know is when it's not in gear, and that is neutral. Neutral position is straight in the middle of all of these, and you'll know it's in neutral when the stick wobbles left and right. Now, I'm going to step on the clutch pedal, even though the engine is off, and you'll see now I'm in first gear, up and to the left. Now notice it doesn't slide left and right. In neutral, there's my wobble. So first, second is below, to the right and up is third, and so on. It's pretty simple stuff. Now, all cars are going to have a reverse gear. That can be in a different location. It used to be up and to the right for a lot of cars. Nowadays, you're starting to see them on the left. The best cars will have a little lockout, like this lift collar, that prevents you from going into reverse unless you really mean it. And when you're practicing going into first, once you get a little bit good at that, you can start doing the same thing with reverse. Okay, you want to find an empty or nearly empty parking lot or road, and it's important that it be flat because you're going to be practicing taking off in first gear and reverse, and the effects of gravity can just complicate things. You need to start the car. When you start a manual transmission, it's always important to make sure it is in neutral. Wiggle that stick. And in newer cars especially, it's necessary, not just good practice, to step on the clutch pedal because that will allow the engine to start. Without stepping on that pedal, you can turn the key all you want. It wouldn't have started with a new car. So when you take off from a stop in a car with a manual transmission, you are essentially trying to coordinate the application of the gas and the release of the clutch pedal, or the engagement of the clutch. But what I'm going to do is have you practice first without stepping on the gas at all. Just use the clutch pedal to get a feel for the clutch engagement. Now, when you lift off the pedal, you're engaging the clutch. When you step on, you're disengaging. I'm just going to call it clutch in and clutch out because that's the simplest thing to remember when the time comes to actually do it. So what you'll do is you're going to watch my feet, watch everything I do. You're stepping on the clutch pedal, all right? Stick goes into first. I happen to have the brake on, so I'm going to take the parking brake off. And then you're just going to slowly let that clutch pedal out. See what I'm doing right now. Now, if you have a newer car, this is actually a little easier because the engine control unit, the computer, senses the load and will compensate and give you a little bit more gas. So here you can see my foot's off the pedal. I'm in first gear and I'm moving. Pretty simple stuff. Every car is different. I'm going to do it again for you. Here's how we stop. I've got my foot over the brake, clutch in, and I pull the shifter out of first into neutral and come to a stop. All cars are different. What you're doing here is you're getting a feel for where the clutch engages. In some cars it's lower in the pedal travel, like close to the floor, and some it's higher up. All cars are at least a little bit different. So again, clutch in, first gear, let it out slowly. And there you go. You putter around. You can putter around a little bit in first gear if you want to. We'll discuss whether or not we drive in first gear in a bit. So clutch in, stick into neutral, brake, we stop. Now it's actually the same situation for going in reverse, aside from the gear being different. Clutch in, I'm lifting the collar as necessary for this, putting it in reverse, and slowly letting that pedal out. Now, I am looking behind me and I have a backup camera, so I don't want it to look like I'm just blindly backing up. There we go, and we're moving. Now you might find that, I'm going to stop now, ready? Remember, clutch in, brake, and take the stick into neutral. Reverse gear tends to be a little bit faster than first because it's the only one you got. So it will feel a little bit different. You're going to want to practice with that too. Now, having gotten a feel for the clutch application, I'm going to show you how we apply the gas and release the clutch at the same time. And it lets you do the same thing you just did, but faster. Here we go. Clutch in, first gear. Now, watch my feet. I'm going to add some gas and release the clutch, and we're moving in first gear. You can hear we're moving faster this time. Okay, same as last time. Clutch in, braking, stick back into neutral. Now, you probably want me to tell you what RPM you should be going when you release the clutch to take off. I can't tell you that. Reason being, first of all cars are different. I want to say it's going to be around 2,000 RPM just to get you going. But first, all cars are different. And second, I don't want you focusing on the tachometer. You're much better off getting a feel for this just by doing it. And I feel the same way about when we get to the point where we're shifting through the higher gears as well. So we did it once. Let's do it again. Ready? Clutch in, into first gear, adding a little gas, letting out the clutch. Okay? Now, let me give you one tip that I think is one of the most useful things that I've found from instructing people on how to drive manual transmissions, and that is there's a notion that this has to be the perfect synchronized balletic application and release, perfectly even, and that's actually not true. What I've found is a lot of people find the process a lot easier while they're learning if they partway through releasing that clutch, they just, if it starts to grab, just hold for a second and then release the clutch the rest of the way. I'm going to try and do that again so you can see what I'm doing. Rather than just trying to robotically go in with the gas and out with the clutch. It's, you're applying, you come out a bit with your clutch foot. See my hand here. Wait a second. When it starts to grab, just give it a half second and then release the rest of the way. Here's what I'm doing. Ready? Kind of hard to see, I know, but maybe you understand from what I'm describing. And the thing with that is you got to be a little bit careful about overdoing it. You cannot take forever to get your foot off the clutch pedal. What you're trying to do is go from clutch in to clutch out reasonably quickly, and you don't want to do what's called riding the clutch, where you're kind of controlling the car's speed by how much you're letting the clutch slip. That's bad news, and it wears the clutch really quickly. But on the other hand, this one tip seems to help people an awful lot. Now, you'll notice if you do things real slowly, clutch in, first gear, if you do things slowly, you can give it less gas. Here we go, ready? I'm hardly giving it any gas. It's not much different from when I didn't use the gas at all, right? If you want to take off faster, you're going to have to give it more gas. For example, clutch in, first gear. See that? Much faster. Same thing.
So hopefully this was helpful for you. Hopefully it gives you the encouragement that if you have an opportunity to get into a manual transmission and kind of work through that friction point and working the clutch with the gas and the brake, it really is a lot of fun to drive a manual transmission. Many, many years ago in driver's ed, I actually had a manual transmission that I used to use. So rather than doing 2 lessons of review, we would do 1 lesson on a manual transmission for those that wanted to at least give it a try. Had a lot of fun, but I don't have that ability to do that right now. It takes a little bit more to equip the car with the added brake and clutch and everything like that, and I just don't want to go through that. So that brings us to the end of all the material that you should know and be familiar with. So let's talk about the final. So Thursday, you're going to log on here. We're going to come to class. I am going to give you a link on our Facebook page, and you're going to have to come to class at 8 o'clock, and I will have hold up a password that's going to allow you to get into the link to do the final. Once the final is done, you got a one-shot deal on Thursday night to do well. So take your time, review your questions. If you get a passing score, you've passed driver's ed. If you get above a 65 but below what I want for a passing score, then you're going to probably have to do a retake. So study, study, study. It's a lot on content, what we've had here on class. Also, it is pretty heavy from the state manual. Some questions from the textbook, but not a whole lot. So you could look through that. But you should spend more time on the state manual. So here's the state manual, and go through it. Kind of take it, section by section. So here, section 1 was dealing with who needs to get a driver's license. What are some of the requirements? So kind of go through. If you haven't done this, I would underline certain key parts about the test and go from section to section. So section 2 is the different classifications. We talked about the real ID, loss of privileges, knowing alcohol for refusing, loss of license. We talked about the BAC levels, so that should all be familiar with you. So alcohol is going to have at least 4 to 7 questions. I got to take a look at the final again. Fatigue we talked about tonight. So we went over that. Distractions was last night. So you can see this is all information that we have gone over. So go through it with a highlighter, and I would do a heavy highlight. Now, I'm going to go through this relatively quick. Here's vehicle inspection, how to get in the car, get everything adjusted, the use of seat belts. You did your seatbelt project. We talked about child passenger restraints, motorcycle helmets. The only thing we didn't talk about is towing a trailer or securing a load. So make sure you go back through the manual and take a look at that. It's only 2 paragraphs, and I think that's probably why I skip over it. But I had someone say that they had a question about towing a trailer, and they said, we didn't cover it in driver's ed. And that's probably true, because I do skip over it quite a bit because it's really only 1 paragraph. So that's why I think it's really important for you to kind of go through the manual. Again, right of way you need to know. Speed management, you need to know the speed limit in all the different zones that you're going to be traveling. Communication of when to use your directionals. I've been hounding most of you to use your signals constantly. It's better to have it on, not need it, than to need it, not have it on. So kind of go through paragraph by paragraph the entire manual. Here's changing lanes. We talked about that. We talked about passing. Backing up. That was part of when we talked about parking. Roadway conditions. Road driving. I guess that was probably more from the manual. I mean from the textbook, because we really didn't go over much of this. Just remember open bridges. Steel bridges freeze first, so remember that. Nighttime driving we talked about tonight. We talked about the distances that your high beam and low beam shine. And actually, they don't actually give you the number that I gave you tonight. But I want you to know the number that I gave you. All right? So make sure that you know that. I wonder why they don't. Maybe I'm missing it. Something's blocked. Okay, the cameras, the blind spot monitor, all this stuff we've talked about. Heavy on rules of the road. So traffic lights, pavement markings, all that you absolutely need to know. It won't be heavy on the signs. It won't be a lot like what we did for the midterm. But some of these colors and different shapes will be on it, because remember, on your state exam, it's going to be 10 questions on signs and then 30 questions with the rest of the manual. We talked about railroad crossings, route numbers, so this is all stuff that you've got to review. Construction, pavement markings. A section on parking we did, and you can go back to any of the classes that we had and just scrub through it. So I'm just going to kind of go to the very end here, because all this stuff is what we've covered. Financial responsibility, how to fill out a crash report, okay, what to do, all this stuff. Driving emergencies, we had a section. You can see it's pretty straightforward with very light information. So I gave you a lot more than what they did here. And here's trucks, motorcycles, pedestrians. We had that earlier this week. But I wanted to show you at the very end. Here we go. This is the only thing the state gives you to review. All right? I don't think this is very good. I don't think this is going to help you much at all to help study. So what I want you to do is on my YouTube channel, let me get to this right here. I don't know if you can see, but I've made a video of sample questions. It's driver education review questions, New Hampshire. I'll put a link to this on the Facebook page. And I want you, let me get out of this. I want you to go to that either tonight or sometime tomorrow to review the questions. If you do really well, I think I did 80 questions. If you do really well with these review questions, you should do really well with the state, not only the state test, but my final on Thursday. Okay? So I had done this probably 6 months ago before we even had to do a remote driver's ed program, and I was giving this to students to help when the new manual came out to do a better job with studying. So I'll ask a question on this video, and then I take about 3 or 5 seconds, and then I give you the answer. So I would pause it. This is why I'm not showing it right now, is that it goes too quickly. So I would do it on your phone, do it on the computer. I would see what the question is. I'd play the question, then I'd pause it. You write down what you think the answer is, and then I'll give you the correct answer. And you're able to restudy it. You may want to look at it more than once. So I'm going to let you do that on your own. I'm not going to have you do that with me watching you watch, like with the other videos. So that is it for our review. So the rest of the review is those questions. That's all we're going to do for tonight. So I will see you back here Thursday at 8 o'clock. Okay, and I will give you the password. So it's going to be on the Facebook page. You could probably copy the link and just wait for what the what the password is. If you have any questions, like tonight, tomorrow, make sure you text me. I'll try to answer them. If you are confused about anything that we've gone over in class, you don't quite understand it, text me and I'll try to clarify it for you. But I truly believe that you'll be ready for it. I've been quite pleased with classes in the past who have scored in the high 80s, low 90s on this test. But I do know the ones that have done their homework, and some of you have done a better job than others, that those of you that have done your homework will probably score better than those that haven't. Okay? You will not pass driver's ed if you do not pass my final exam. I had someone that just had to keep taking retest after retest until they could pass. They could have had all their driving done by now. Okay? So I will hold back driving if you do not test to the level that I expect. So study hard. I know you're going to do a good job. I apologize for the bad camera tonight, but I hope that this has been helpful and that you've learned a lot, and we'll continue to drive to get your driving done so you can get your license hopefully before school. I know some of you have late birthdays. I have nothing to do with that, so you can't get it before your birthday, but I've been really, really pleased with the driving so far from this class. I appreciate you being on time, coming to the school, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that you took this program and how well that you're doing. So we'll see you Thursday. Good luck, and have a good night.